Okay, so it looks like we are live
It
on
says
Be
live.
Live. It says live on Be Live. So
Okay.
I'm not sure. Oh, there we are. Yay, we're live even
We're
on
live
Facebook
and
now,
it
so I
shows
can see
like,
us.
yeah,
And
I
you
can
can see
see,
us too. Yay!
well, I can see that and I can see reactions and I can see comments. This is like really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have never done a Facebook Live with Be Live. This is my first time, and I'm really thankful that Linda is going to be joining me on this new adventure that I have going on today. So I want to welcome you all to Monday Whispers Chat on Friday. So today is Friday and not Monday, but I have had some challenges with my shoulder, and I'm going to be shifting around and moving a lot because sitting is difficult. But I still wanted to make sure that we still touched base with Linda today because I really wanted to be able to talk about what it is that she wanted to share today. So I'm going to start off with an introduction to Linda. So Linda's gift is guiding others on how to map out their life and business. Women hire her to unpack their hidden suitcases because most don't know how to outsmart or overcome the fears of overcome the fears and end up disillusioned, uncertain, and have no idea which way to go. She helps them gain clarity, confidence, and direction so that she can achieve their dreams. She combines decades of experience in the corporate world with her own life lessons, as well as her professional and personal successes, supporting women who are in the corporate world and women who are ready to break free and create more time to live life on their terms. She developed tools and a framework with the integrative approach to life, mindset, and business, treating each one as separate unit and then connecting them together. Her use of holistic mentoring through a mapping out phase to uncertain and clarify while exposing their hidden treasures, drawing out steps they need to take, and then creating and implementing a mapped out, clearly defined action plan. She's found the key to success lies that within our relationship to ourselves, our ability to embrace the whole self, including our strengths, messes, quirks, and uniqueness becomes clear. Her work has shown that in order to succeed, first you need to map out and then plan the right model of healthy and strong relationship with yourself. So that has been a very challenging thing for me to read for some reason today. Apparently I need to go back to reading school. So Linda, is there anything else that I've missed in describing who you are?
No, not really. That pretty well covers it.
Okay, good. So Linda's her title is actually really interesting. So when I actually got the notification that Linda was going to join us for Monday Whispers Chat, it says, yes, you can get through a WTF year. And then when I went on to just read her description of the things that she's talking about, it is so much like so many of us that struggle with different things that happen to us in our lives. And so can you tell me a little bit about, like, where did you come up with this title? Like, why this particular title, Linda?
Well, because I experienced a WTF year myself. And I think that we don't understand when we're young and we're going into like our 20s and we wake up and we go, wow, I know it all. And, I'm on top of it and I'm an adult now and, I can take on the world. And that's an excellent philosophy to have. But the reality of it is in most cases, you have not experienced a lot of things that life can throw you. And my WTF year started with my husband getting sick. And originally we thought it was diabetes. That's what they kept telling us. And within I want to say a couple month period, he kept complaining more and more about pain in his side. And so through the process of going to different doctors and finally getting the diagnosis, he actually had multimyelinoma cancer, which is it's a blood cancer that's inside of your bones and it gets in the marrow. And so that was the start of this WTF year, where I went through a short period of time dealing with his cancer, finding out he had 2 kinds of cancer. And within a 4-month period, he was gone, because of course there's no solution for 2 types of cancer in your body. My oldest daughter tried to commit suicide 2 weeks after that. And that was just like one hit after another, whether it was within my personal life, whether it was within my business life, because I was a store manager of a multi-million-dollar store. And there's all kinds of undercurrents and things that were going on at the same time as I was trying to deal with 2 major life crises. And then other things happened. So that year became one of the many catalysts in my life to drive me to where I am at today. And I woke up after, I want to say 9 months, and I was in severe clinical depression and suffering from PTSD from all those knocks. And people think PTSD is just, they talk a lot about it with soldiers, which of course, I mean, that's, that's logical, but you can suffer from PTSD just from your own traumatic experiences that you've gone through. And I don't think people necessarily recognize that. Plus, I ended up being a single parent to my granddaughter. So it was like this huge period in my life that just, overwhelmed one thing after another. And I can remember sitting in my car at one point at work, thank God nobody was around, screaming, "Why me?" and hitting my steering wheel, because it was like this huge, I don't know, ball, just huge bowling ball on top of me with the weight. And so, but what I found is that you can survive those experiences. You can actually come out a better person. You can actually step back and look at it. And I can look at it now going, wow, those were all gifts that were given to me. I just at that time didn't see them as such. Yeah. But if I hadn't gone through those, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So
and those things make it really difficult. And so, like, my background is in mental health, and that's one of the things that that I often hear from people is that so I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't diagnose anybody with PTSD, obviously, but the symptoms are there and the signs are there, and so using those. And a lot of times people don't get diagnosed with PTSD unless they've had like these major life experiences that have happened, like you said, like going to war or being involved in, so like people that that were involved in 9/11, for example, or in a tsunami. Like, so in those particular cases, those things happen, but and people will be diagnosed with PTSD. But when our overall life of everything that happens, like we do, it's called post-traumatic stress for a reason.
Right.
And so, and people seem to think that they're everyday life stresses that are huge because they're not just everyday. And then when you add them, one of the things that you said that was really interesting and that people don't always realize is that you have big major life events that happen, but then you have all these undercurrents of things that are going on underneath that. And it makes a huge difference in terms of how you're able to cope. If you only had one thing to deal with, and so if it was just the death of your husband at that particular moment, or it was the attempted suicide with your daughter, or all these different things, like all these different one-time events, if that's all that you had to deal with, makes it so that we can manage typically. And most of us can actually handle one particular thing without too much disruption in our life. Like, obviously we still go through grief, we still go through all those things, but then when you start compounding all these extra things on in our lives, it makes a huge difference as to how we're actually going to respond to things. And it could be that you've been dealing with a number of things over the years, and then you have one thing. So like that straw that breaks the camel's back kind of thing as well, is like those are different times where people will say, yeah, well, I've been able to deal with all these other things that have actually gone on in my life. And like, so
Mm-hmm.
cat died and now my life has just fallen apart.
Right.
So
Absolutely. I went to counseling for a couple of years after that year, and my counselor told me that she said, I couldn't even believe you're walking, because it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't just one thing. It was two things, three things. Just moving your house. People don't realize just moving to a new location is one of the major stressors in the life.
yeah,
So if you have a situation like that, but then you've got other critical things that are happening in your life, those weigh on you. And I read something during I call it my hibernation period, that a lot of times, especially with women, because we're such natural caregivers, that depression and that type of thing is sometimes a way of your soul, your inner self saying, I need to hibernate because I've been carrying too much for too long. And that's a thing I see now in the work that I do, is that because women are caregivers, we walk into situations, we create different masks to put on to fit those situations, and we get lost behind those masks, because a lot of women will wake up going, I don't know who I am. And that was another one of my catalysts. Is I woke up going, I've raised two families. I had never been alone for 40 some years. I had always taken care of a family. I had always taken care of employees, because I was always in a field or doing a career that had to do with other people. And it was like, it was seriously, I mean, I joke about it now, but it's like, oh, do I like vanilla ice cream or do I like chocolate ice cream? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you're doing so much for everybody else. I was lucky, and because I had no longer had children or that type of responsibility to do something crazy. So I applied for and got a visa for Portugal, sold everything, packed everything in what I owned into 2 suitcases, and went to Portugal for 5.5 months, which gave me what I needed to step back and go, okay, who is Linda? And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? But, Rollie, I did a post in a group, this couple days ago, just talking about aging.
Mm-hmm.
And I was totally blown away by the response. And because so many, again, women I don't know if there's a new book out called Be Brave, Not Perfect, I think is the title.
Okay.
Women are raised to be perfect, and that they, and I heard the TED Talk by the author, and I was like, yeah, she's right. I can remember as a child sitting down and being told to sit this way, to stand this way, to put a book on my head, to set the table this way, always this perfection, and so if we're, as women, raised to be perfect, then we're trying to scale up to something that we can never attain, which then makes us feel less than, makes us going, what's wrong with me because I can't reach this goal that I'm told I need to reach. So when you put all of that together, women hide so much, and we need to break that down. And that whole WTF year was part of that. I worked in a corporate environment. They gave me 2 weeks off after my husband died. Wow. My husband and I had been married at that time 28 years. 28 years. We grew up together. How am I supposed to get over him in 2 weeks and then walk into a multi-million-dollar store and run it at Christmas time?
Yeah, that would definitely be a challenge.
That
would definitely how that's not realistic. And I know that a lot of times I've worked with different people over the years. And one of the things that people would come to me and say, well, I should be over this death by now. And it would be however long. So some people would be like a couple of months. Some people would be like a couple of years. And grief is such a huge, complex thing that we have to go through. And it is so individualized for people. And there's no right and wrong as to how you're dealing with grief. And so now things are more open in terms of people actually dealing with grief from a professional standpoint, that there's a lot more, people are more open to it, that they know that there's a lot more, that it's a lot more complex. But when I first started 18 years ago, it would be, people would be coming saying like, well, no, I need to be over this by now. No, you don't need to be over it by now. Like you said, in your particular case, 28 years. Right. So for 28 years, you were with this one particular person and you had all these different things. And then on top of that, you guys didn't have time to go through anything. So then you've got that added on top of the complexity of that particular grief, because you guys didn't even have time to process. Right. So you thought he had diabetes, then he died. Like there's like two huge changes in terms of the spectrum. Right. So it's like, and people tend to forget that, like other people tend to forget that, right? So it's like, well, no, you should just get over it. Or I'll hear people say, oh, well, yeah, but I got over it in like, I went through the same thing and it was like, I was good after a year. Well, that's nice, but this person isn't. This person is still dealing with whatever it is that's going on and whatever it is that's happening for them emotionally. And so like, same as I have, I've had a number of different people who have lost their children, adult children or teenage children over the years. And it's like, well, they should be over it by now. Well, how can they be over it? Somebody that they just gave birth to is no longer with them for whatever reason, whether it was because of illness, because of something, an accident, or sudden death, or like there could be a number of different things. And so like, how can you just be over it? Right. So there's a lot of different phases and a lot of different things that actually happen. And depending on what it is, the complexities of what it is that's going on in your life at the time of everything else happening makes a huge difference.
Right. And, you know, to that, you don't ever get over it. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people put this terminology onto things, and you're never going to get, I'm still not over my husband's death. There'll be times that, well, this is the 20th, last July was the 20-year anniversary, and his birthday is in November. And this November, I was driving down a street in Seattle and I started crying. And it's like, what the hell? But you know what I'm saying? And it's like, why now? But all of a sudden I had this just huge feeling of emptiness and realizing how much I missed him.
Yeah.
And so people, when they say, oh, you should be over it, you never, ever, ever get over it. What you do is you learn to carry it with you with dignity and grace, and you work through it. There's a huge difference. Yeah. It's like you can learn to deal with something, or you can learn to heal from something. Two different things.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, as a society, we are set up to deal with things, not heal from things, if that makes sense. And so, you know, I lost Bruce. 2 weeks later, my daughter tried to commit suicide. I found her with her daughter. I was babysitting, and, you know, I found my daughter, and it was like, I hadn't even totally comprehended what had happened to my husband, let alone now I have this to deal with. And so what I've learned from all of this is that grief, you're right, it's individual. People will say, oh, well, you should be over it. It's been a year. And it's like, no, I also had 5 other major crises that I'm grieving from. Grief isn't just associated with death. It's not just associated with a major thing. It can be associated with losing a job that you love. It can be associated with, as I went through, my oldest daughter, when she was 14, became a drug addict. So I grieved for the child I thought she was going to be, because I lost that.
Yep.
And had to grieve with this life I thought she was going to be living, and go through that whole process there. So grief is, people tend to associate it in one way, but it can be losing your home. It can be going through a divorce. It can be going through anything that you have an attachment to that is taken away from you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. And so like that just kind of brings me to somebody who I've dealt with over the years, that she's lost her identity in terms of who she was because of an illness, right? So she
Mhm.
wasn't able to work anymore. So she lost that. She lost her independence. She was always reliant on somebody else to be able to do things.
Mhm.
And like 20 years later, she's still fighting to be able to get major surgery that that should have been looked after, but it wasn't because of the way that it was actually recognized in terms of health.
Mhm.
And so it was not considered something that was insurable because of the way that it falls under the category was
Mhm.
it's plastic surgery. And it wasn't. It has nothing to do with plastic surgery. It has to do with basic functioning. And so it's just, so you lose that identity. You lose
Right.
that part of who it is that you are, and you have to grieve that.
Right.
And if you continue to still be in something,
Mhm.
you can't grieve something that is constantly still changing and
Right.
hasn't been resolved.
Right.
Right. So like that's another layer of things. Like we are going deep today, Linda. This is awesome.
Right.
Right. So like these are things that like over the years that and
Right.
people have so much difficulty in being able to kind of come to grips with some of that, right? So it makes a huge difference for a lot of people. And when people don't when people have these expectations, like you said, like growing up, it's like, okay, well, you're supposed to behave this way. You're supposed to do these things. These certain things are supposed to happen. And so people pass judgment on those kinds of things and what it is that's happening without kind of taking a step back to figure out what is it that's going on in their life.
Mhm.
What is it that's happening in their life? So oftentimes I'll hear people say, oh, well, so-and-so is just so emotional. And I grew up with that, like, oh, you're crying again. Yeah, I am crying again. Like I am emotional. I have a lot. I'm very, very sensitive in terms of I start crying at somebody else's funeral. Like I think I was probably 17, I think 16, 17. And I might have been 18, but I went to my boyfriend at the time's grandfather's funeral. I met him once. He was in a coma. Never had a conversation with the guy. And so I'm at the funeral and I'm crying and people are like, okay, seriously? Like, and so my boyfriend at the time says, you're more upset about it than I am. Like, you never met him. And I'm like, I know, I'm just so sad with everybody. Like, but it's just, and people pass judgment on a number of different things, right? So what it is that's happened, somebody who has, addiction issues, and people pass judgment on what's going on with them and how horrible of a person that they are and how could they make those kind of choices, or somebody who has gone through whatever it is that's going on in their life.
Mhm.
And people have these expectations of how you should be handling things differently, right? So like, why is there a certain way of being able to handle things? Like, are we not human? Are we not different people? Do we not have different experiences and have different different life experiences? And so I love the fact that you've brought up a lot of these different examples and like how deep that these things really go in for people. And
it's terrible. And you know, the part of the whole thing is because of the way, and I'm just going to say society because it's a society type thing, is that judgment. You know, people are said, well, you should act this way, and so somebody sees you acting a different way and they're going, well, why? You know, and it's like, but that creates that inner judge. And so then we start judging ourselves and we start saying, why am I doing this? Or why am I not fitting in? Or why, you know, do I think differently? Because the norm is to do, you know, and basically what the hell is a norm? There is no norm because we're all so individual. And the post I told you about age is that, you know, like seriously, I don't know when it was, a while ago, I looked in the mirror and I went, who am I? I don't recognize that lady in the mirror because in my head, I'm thinking I'm still like, you know, cool 30 and whatever, but my body's not reflecting that, you know. And the point being is it's mental health month and it's body image this week. And women are so critical over their body image. And why? Because social media, because of advertising, because of all those things they portray. You know, if you look at Instagram as a perfect example, here's all these photoshopped images of tall, thin women. Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
I can still hear you.
Okay. So,
so just to give everybody If Linda happens to disappear, she's coming back in again, and I will just talk.
So anyway, they these tall, thin, beautiful women with these flowy white gowns and all this, and I'm looking at them going, oh my God, if anybody saw me in the morning, you know what, my hair's sticking out or it's all flat on one side, and you know, that kind of thing. And so as women, we're looking at that thinking that's who we should be. That's what we should look like.
Yeah.
And so that inner judge really kicks in. And so people won't talk about how they feel about themselves or their body, or the fact that, you know, God, I'm getting old. What do I do now?
Yeah.
You know? And so I don't care if I'm getting old. I'm almost 69 and
Wow.
I am creating a business. I want to get my message out there because I really believe that every single person has something they should be contributing to the world. And that instead of listening to society tell us what we should do, we need to look at ourselves and take that and create, you know, a movement, shift the world. I don't want to I get on my bandwagon when I start talking about it, but we're just all raised to have this inner judge is really the point. And we need to let go of that judge and really go, you know, I call myself the badass Nan. You know, because I am not going to stop, and nobody should stop based on society's rules. So,
yeah, and it makes all the difference in the world. And it looks like I am frozen with part of my screen.
Yeah, see, that was what happened. That's why I thought maybe, so maybe it's be live.
But you can still hear me, so that works.
Yeah, that works.
So I'm not sure what it is that's happening.
I don't know.
So this is the first time, like I said, this is the first time I've done it,
Yeah.
but Facebook and Zoom are not friends again today for me. So, and I'm kind of frustrated with that because I pay, for the webinar features in order to be able to do this. And
right.
So when it's not working, it just gets really frustrating.
Absolutely.
But that's technology, right?
Yep. We're not in Mercury retrograde yet, so we can't blame that.
No. Yeah, so I'm not sure what it is that's happening, but my screen, but you can still hear me, so that's good.
Yeah. Well,
and so one of the things that in terms of the conversations that we've been having, like, and like I said, like we're going deep, so like this is pretty awesome. And so I don't generally have these kind of conversations with people, so because people are very much like, this is the way that we're supposed to be doing things. This is the way that things are supposed to happen. And I see that a lot with even people connecting with themselves and who they are and being able to identify who they are. Right. And so a lot of people really struggle with that. Well, I should be doing this, or I grew up this way, so this is the way that it's supposed to be. And people really struggle with those things. Mm-hmm. And so from the description that I read of who it is that you are and what it is that you do with people, is that you kind of take them through that those steps and those patterns of who is it that they are. Is that what I'm understanding from what it is that you do?
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that, you know, I have is, and it's a free gift for all of your listeners, is an inner wisdom meditation, which is really just asking themselves, start off with, what is it that I really want? And I do this with my clients because when you ask that question, the very first response is always, oh, I want this, this, this. And I'm going, okay, but what is it you really want? Mm-hmm. Because our first response is always what we think we want, because it's given to us by the outside world. And so as you go through these series of questions, it helps you bring up, God, maybe I really want to be that ballerina I was when I was 5 years old, you know? Yeah. Who knows? And that's fine. And so I usually take them through something like that. I work on their mindset right away, because mindset is the key. If your mindset is totally in a fixed mode, then you're not going to change anything because you accept the way things are. If you're in a growth mindset, then you're ready to go, okay, it didn't work out, but what do I need to do to change it? Where do I need to go? What, you know, how can I improve on what I'm doing? And then I actually make them go through a whole week of paying attention to their life, paying attention to the energy around them, the people around them, where they live, and all those things, so that they can recognize, wow, is this really working for me? Is this really how I want to live my life? Because again, we're all on autopilot, Rollie, totally on autopilot. We do things like we get up at 8 o'clock and we have our breakfast and we have our coffee, take the kids to school, just this routine that is so ingrained, we don't even feel anymore half the time.
Yeah.
And then I make them design out their life. How do they really want to live? Maybe they don't want to live. Now I'm in the States, so maybe they don't want to live in the States. Maybe they want to become a digital nomad and travel the world. Or maybe they want to go where the sun is. Who knows what is calling them. And then we start talking about their business, because when you build a business, that business should actually serve you. Now I've got, and not you serving the business. And so if you start a business that is based on somebody else's values, which so many people do, based on what everybody else is saying works, but maybe won't work for you, then that business is not going to succeed, not fully, ever.
Yeah.
You might as well be working for a corporate job, because, if your business isn't aligned with who you are, it doesn't work.
And it does, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It just, they were outside.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was concerned about you hearing me. Anyway, so that's kind of what I do, is because I really think that part of what is our values have shifted based on what we're being told, if that makes sense. So we might have an inner feeling about what I believe in and where I want to go with my life and everything. And then you're told, oh no, you should live this way and have an 80-inch TV and have a Tesla car and have all these things. So we're focused on something that's external versus internal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does, and it makes all that difference. So one of the things that you were saying is that about people and being able to do things the way that in their business that somebody else thinks that they need to be doing. So I share on Facebook all the time. Like, that's just something that I do. I share what it is that's going on in my personal life. I share on what's going on in my business life, and I'm just a sharer, and that's just one of the things that I do. And so I had somebody, it was probably about 2 years ago now, that came up to me and said, hey, Rollie, like, you share way too much. And like, people don't like that. And the feedback that I'm getting from people is that you shouldn't be sharing. And this person isn't even affiliated with my business. Like, it's not even connected with my business. It is just somebody from the outside world, and says, well, and people are saying that they're going to stop following you because you share too much. And so my initial reaction was like, oh my gosh, people are not, I need to figure out I'm doing this. So then I stopped sharing. I stopped sharing who it was that I was and what it is that I was doing. And I don't know that everybody cares whether or not it is that I went for my walk today or whatever, right. But I just share that is just who it is that I am. Before I even started my business, I was sharing things on social media. And then when I started my business, it was like I continued with that same pattern. And then it's like, oh, well, you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that and you're supposed to do this. And so now it's like I share what I share, when I share, how I share. If you don't like it, then leave my page. Like there's nothing I can do. I can't stop you, but I'm not going to stop being me. And so that is something that is really, but it took me a long time to be able to do that. Like I said, that was 2 years ago that this person came up, and like I stopped sharing all the different things that was going on. And so now I'm back to I share, and depends on what it is that's going on in my life. The last couple weeks hasn't been a whole lot of sharing, especially this last week, since I was in bed most of the week with my shoulder injury.
Right.
But it's like I share what I want, when I want, and how I want. And so my husband says, oh yeah, there's the Facebook queen, because it's like I'm gonna have to, because it's like, and especially when I was doing the selfie challenge. Did I lose you? I'm still here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because I was still able to hear you. Hello? Now, I don't know if anybody can hear me. It's like I share what I want, when I want, and how I want. And so hello? I'm not sure whether or not we are still connected, not connected. I don't hear Linda. Linda is completely frozen. My screen is frozen. So I have no idea.
Able to hear you.
Hello?
Hello? Now, I don't know if anybody can hear me. It's like I share what I want when I want it.
Okay, so I definitely did lose Linda, and my screen is frozen. So I have gone to full screen with my screen kind of all wonky. So there is, so I'm not sure if Linda's going to try and join me back on her, from her phone. Oh, hang on a second. Somebody just messaged me on Facebook. Nope, not her. Not her. I'm not sure who it is. So the so I'm not sure whether or not she's going to be able to join me through her phone. I know that she said that she was having some difficulty with her internet, and she was getting booted off and was able to jump back on her phone. So I don't see an email from her. I'm just checking, just checking the other computer. So I really loved having a conversation with Linda, and I definitely want to be able to continue this conversation with her. So what I'm thinking that I'm going to do is see if we can schedule another time that Linda and I can jump on. Oh, maybe. Is she coming on? Because it says...
Oh, she's not there.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. So sorry. The internet went there. I told you what happened. I was surprised we went for as long as we did. I am so sorry.
That's okay. I was having a conversation with myself, letting people know, actually not technically with myself, because I was still talking to whoever it is that is watching the replay. But I was just saying how much of an awesome conversation this was. And so if we weren't able to reconnect again, I was going to see if we could set something up so that we can actually still connect.
Oh,
so
happy to come back on anytime.
we're back on, and my face is still half on, so I have no idea. But I'm afraid to leave, because if I leave my screen, then we may get disconnected, because I'm not familiar with Be Live at all. So so people can see but that's okay, because it gives me the opportunity to be able to move. So things happen for a reason, right? So I can actually move, and nobody can see me moving and shifting. They just see my eyeballs.
Yeah. Too funny. So you were talking about being the queen of sharer, and you stopped sharing. That's kind of when I lost you, I think. And your husband called you Facebook something.
Yeah, we were doing the I was doing a selfie challenge, and so my poor husband was like, oh no. so I was gentle on him. I didn't do very many selfies with him, because because he really didn't want to have to do the extra selfies.
Oh, funny.
But we did. But like, and that's one of the things, it's just being ourselves, and and being able to be okay with being ourselves. And so same as like my quirky, any of my quirkiness, right? People would say, like, they're like, oh, well, you should do this. Like, I do not eat vegetables. I can't stand vegetables. I try really hard to try and find different ways of eating vegetables, but I don't like eating vegetables. I never have. And so it has to do with the taste, the texture. Like, there's a number of different reasons why there's certain things that I will eat or not. And so, like, yes, nutritionally, I definitely need to, which is the reason why I try and find ways of being able to do that part. But it's like, oh, well, you have to do this. Well, okay, well, that's nice, but that's not me, and I will do what it is that I can. Right. So it makes it really, really challenging when people have all these expectations and of what it is that you should be doing or how you should be doing it. And and I would have never given you 69. And so I would have never known that you were 69 had you have not said something.
Yeah. Almost 69. Not till August.
Not to, okay, sorry, not quite 69.
No, but you know, you brought up something. We tend to live our lives by other people's expectations, and so when we do that, we end up going, well, why? You know, you're unhappy because maybe those expectations aren't your own personal expectations. And so, oh, is she coming back?
Can you hear me?
I shrunk down. Oh, there you are. Oh, this is so funny. Anyway, what was it? Oh, I've had clients say to me, there's something wrong with me because I'm not as far along as I should be. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with you. Where are you getting that information? And well, they say on Facebook, I should be this far in my business. And it's like, no, because your business journey is your own personal journey. It's nobody else's journey. And are you there, Rollie, or am I talking to myself?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool.
I can hear you. I can see you. And according to Facebook, we can see both of us.
Yeah, you're frozen on my end, though. How interesting. Okay. Oh, well. Anyway, so I work with my clients to understand that a business journey is your own personal journey. Oh, you're coming. This is so interesting. What a test of patience. What people need to understand, there you are, is that in their journey, it's also a growth experience for a person. And if you're not willing to, and this is where the unpack the hidden suitcases, because we tend to hide our messes, we tend to hide our insecurities in a little box and shove them away because they're not acceptable by society standards. But if you are building a business, you have to face your garbage. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't face your garbage, it's just going to go with you. And every time you go to a new level, there's that garbage just waiting to be uncovered. So, and in my own personal experience of building my own business, it's brought up a lot of stuff that I thought I had healed, but I'd only dealt with.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? So I'm actually hearing an echo. Can you hear an echo?
Yeah, I hear an echo and you're cutting in and out.
So what I'd like to propose is that we actually set up another time that you and I can actually continue this conversation if you're interested.
I'm totally interested. I would love to do that.
So by then we'll have figured out all the BeLive bugs.
Okay. Sounds good.
What we're going to do is we're going to put in the program that Linda was talking about in meditation. We're going to make sure that that's in the comments. And
yeah, I will.
And I will definitely have set up another time where we can do this without the echo, with full screen.
Okay. Totally, Les. Thank you so much for having me. Okay.
And
bye-bye.
We'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
So, hi, Linda. I think we're still on.